Thank you, Karam. There's David. And welcome to our final session of the day, exploring the frontiers of photo studio operations. We have an hour for this panel, but I assume with this incredible lineup that we have, it's going to go by quickly. So do not forget to put questions in the Q&A panel at any point throughout the session, and I will do my best to keep an eye on those and make sure those get integrated into the conversation as we move forward. To get started, I'm going to have the team introduce themselves here. So starting off with Maria.
Hello everyone, I'm Maria and working in Amazon like a Photostudio lead. It's a pleasure for me to join to this meeting and talk about a little bit about the future.
Thank you, Maria. SK?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm SK working with Movie Technologies as a head of operations from India. And my full name is Senthil Kumar, and for the Western tongue, it might be a tongue twister. So people call me SK.
Thank you for that. Niels?
Well, hello everyone. I'm Niels from Scotch and Soda, and I'm the Photostudio manager there.
And last but certainly never least, David.
Hi everybody, I'm David Brint from SpinMe, and we're workflow studio specialists for the industry.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. So let's dive in. Looking at the frontiers of photo studio operations, I would say that probably one of the more leading conversations that we're probably going to have is really around artificial intelligence. So how are your teams and organizations talking about or leveraging AI right now? Feel free to dive in.
From our point of view, we are working very closely with AI, and in reality have been working with AI for a number of years. We just haven't given it that name, that terminology. I think the whole industry is looking for innovation, ways to improve our workflows, our practices, the things that we do. And all that's happening is that AI is speeding up, and we're finding other ways of utilizing it, but without taking away from the creativity that we need for the solutions to work online.
Yeah, I think like David mentioned that we have some years developing new tools. For example, virtual try-on that you already can test, can use, that we shoot every day. And I think now we have like a little more to take that and just make more things and maybe develop new things, but in base of all that we already made, like 3D scans.
Yeah, I think 3D is going to be another big conversation piece as well, especially in the near future. Niels, were you going to add something as well?
Yeah, certainly. I think in our company there's been spoken about AI, but mostly at lunch table level, to be honest. I mean, we are a fashion company. We're aiming to show people high-end classic photography. AI at first hand seems kind of the opposite. So we haven't really been talking about this and developing this for the future. Nonetheless, we're following developments closely, as there's many other ways to utilize AI, we feel, that could become useful for us in the near future.
Yeah, and we at Movitech, we also use AI mostly for the post-production work, and we are into developing a few concepts as well. We've been working very closely with AI and developers for the past 5 years, and as Neil said, that we can take AI help at certain level, but still human intervention is unavoidable.
I think it's quite interesting because somebody said, one of us said that it's at the coffee table. I think that was Niels. I think it's not just at the coffee table. I think it's at C-level execs who are reading and attending meetings where they hear about AI. and think it's a magic wand that will resolve everything in the studio production, and we don't need photography. We can use AI now, and that will resolve this and do this, and it'll be a lot cheaper. And I don't think it's as simple as that. I think it's a question for us in this space to see where it can really make a difference, where it can enable us to be more efficient, maybe to save cost or to be quicker or to take away human error. But I don't see it in the short term for the normal fashion or product photography replacing the camera, the photographer, and the stylist. I think those people are still going to be absolutely vital to what we do as an industry. But this is probably to support them and allow them to have more time to focus on what they do rather than all the ideas and things they have to do around it that distract them.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there, David. I think certain hypes on LinkedIn, especially like the Pope in a white puffer jacket, may have sparked some boardroom ideas around this. But in all honesty, anyone with basic Photoshop skills could have made their image. I've been looking around a little bit at certain techniques, certain pieces of software that could potentially make such things, or at least anything useful in terms of generative AI for us in the studio. But to be honest, I couldn't find anything that's available to me that can make a proper generative AI asset on a level that we could use consumer facing. And there certainly are things, but not available to me, either because I'm working at a relatively small fashion company or they are still in a testing phase or whatsoever, but it's certainly not there yet. And indeed, like you said, I expect it to take years before such a thing is going to come. And we should, a company our size should start considering whether we can use generative AI or not. But there's a lot of chances I see in other areas of AI that are not generative, but more supportive to our workflow.
Correct.
And I think that's where I see the low-hanging fruit.
Yes, I think the major impact of AI in the Photostudio is in pre-production and post-production. In pre-production, help us to improve lists, the ways to bring products to the studio, or even if we don't need it, bring more the products to the studio, we can just scan with the phone or in base in a fulfillment center in a company. Then when you already have the sample, just in post-production, the way that you can, remove background, add backgrounds, or if you already have the 3D scan, what you can do with that? You can do video, you can do 360 spin. So I think it's that, but it's still the photo have to be taken for someone. The product is there. Imagine that you want to shoot a coffee machine. It's not, imagine that this coffee machine red. No, it's not what you want to show. You have to have the original and then try and test.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even I think of, if you just imagine Leonardo's anatomy structure for each and every creatures, or human included. He has a perfect anatomy balancing. He knows exactly what's the measurement of the eyes, ears, and each and every features. But it's up to the artist to put a presentable figure into the paper. So now we can say that AI knows the anatomy, but as an artist, it will not be up to our thought level to manage that. Okay, because here, if we say compared to Leonardo's structuring, AI has algorithms, it has patterns to understand, and the improvement of AI technology has to be not only on the algorithm or machine learning or something like that. It has to be from the hardware side as well. On the other day when we were discussing that there's a camera called light field camera, and it was actually introduced much prior to the current field, but now I feel that would be the right time, because now normal cameras understand only the luminance value, the highlights, shadows, midtones, and those kind of things. It understands the light value, With the light field camera, it understands the direction of each and every light rays that has been passing through. And those information might be vital for AI to predict what are the objects are there into another level. So the AI involvement has to be from hardware, software, and it has to be 360 degree.
And I feel like to mix in a little bit, SK, what you're saying, but also what Niels said before is, that there is no software that's available to us, whether that is a small business or if it is in beta testing. And in order to get a fully finalized asset that there's 5 fingers on each hand kind of thing, and that doesn't have like 2 heads. Like we've seen all of the bloopers of AI for sure. But it requires a tech stack. It requires additional systems on top of that. It can't just be like a plug and play solution. So I guess if we're not utilizing AI really in a photo studio yet, or if there are restrictions, because of the advancement of that technology, what are some other, frontiers, if you will, that the studio is using or that your company is using that's either supporting AI or a completely different initiative?
Well, we use AI in a number of ways, and there are certain categories of industry that should be concerned. So, for instance, translation services are now very easily done in AI, and you double check the translation to a different language rather than get somebody to do the whole translation. And it's things like that where you can have AI working. Or in our industry, the automation of moving images as soon as they're captured in linear fashion straight to post-production or QC, and not somebody having to do it manually at the end of the day, and the renaming conventions and knowing at any time where samples are. You can automate a lot of these things with what today is called AI, which we just call automation, and have used our software programs to make decisions based on certain facts. If fact A happens and fact B happens, the software knows to manage and do fact C. But if fact A and fact D happen, it does option E. And as in the industry, we've been doing that and are doing more of that, but it doesn't detract or take away from the need of the actual stylist, the photographer, and even, as SK said, the post-production person, because certain products or certain parts of the process you can do very well with AI. But there are other products and other parts that need that human interaction to finish it off or to get the lines. Because as Niels said, if you're in high fashion, the drape of the garment, the hanging of it and everything is equally important, and it's got to look effective and be an inspiration for somebody to want to buy it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think all these, I've called it side tasks on my note list, but it's much more. In our studio, I can already think of like recognizing a model that's on the picture, because we name the model, well, not necessarily the model on our website, but we name the height and the size the model is wearing. So recognizing the model is important to us, but also recognizing the outfit the model is wearing so that we can use the secondary items as complete the look, or however you may call it on your website. But there's many such things. But I think for all these things, the main thing for me to integrate them in my way of working would be that as soon as your photo studio is in a stage where they've moved away from Excel files and WeTransfer, but have a more automated workflow system, whatever it is, then you need this AI or automated tools to fit seamlessly in your workflow somehow. And especially for players our size, relatively small, with no dedicated IT or development resources, it means that it needs to fit in the automation workflow that we have already. So we heavily depend on the software that we have already and that we are using, because integrating another one is not going to be efficient unless we can make a massive step. But these are all like tiny steps, and many tiny steps make a massive step as well. But so I feel it should be integrated in software that we are using already.
So that actually lends to a question that came in. It is actually for you specifically, Niels, but I also feel like some other folks can also answer this. But it's from Anonymous. With reference to AI, as you mentioned, quote unquote, low hanging fruit with using the technology in your process. How have you utilized AI or other automation in your process with photographing jewelry? Do you use it to retouch it? If so, how do you train it with reflections? It's a very specific question.
Very specific. No, we don't have any specific AI utilized at the moment. We do have our workflow automated. So we've passed the Excel file, we transfer stage, luckily, for a few years now, and we're working with a software system. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention names.
If it's part of the conversation, you're not selling the software, you're fine.
Okay, no, yeah, we're working with Creative Force, which has improved our smoothness of working massively. So this for me means if they would add AI integrations, either through an API that we can connect into it, or because they build it in their software, that would be super valuable for us. But if it's something else that I need to integrate with in that software myself, then the chances that it's going to be beneficial are very small, unless it's generative AI, for example, and making massive steps. Then I may take the effort. Does that answer the question more or less, you think?
I hope so. Otherwise, we'll just get a follow-up question in there. We'll see.
Okay,
from
good.
Anonymous. I'm curious then, actually, with post-production processes, do you guys see any, like specifically if we're talking about jewelry here, which is so finite, or even watches per se, it's such specific detail, also, diamonds and gemstones and everything in different facets. Are you receiving assets that are AI, or are you, is there any interaction when it comes to jewelry for you guys?
No, jewelry cannot be done on AI. That's from my experience. We tried, and we failed big time. Jewelry is a very hard part, even for the human eye. When they do a cutout or something, they have a shiny background on top of it, a diamond 24-karat jewelry with diamonds sparkling all over, and it's very hard to even define it with a human eye, the edge of the product. And as I said, AI can understand corners, because I specifically worked with their machine learning system, tagging and all those things. So it understands corners, but it cannot understand curves. So what it does, it can read a specific value, and it will go along, match the RGB value to an extent, and after that it just faded off. It creates a blur feather for 15, 16, 11, and that's what is the biggest challenge in AI working on jewelry or any product.
I have to agree with SK in my experience, and I'm certainly going to bow to his knowledge on the actual post-production, but my experience is where we've worked with jewelry companies. It's the most difficult area, and as I see it, it's one of the last areas that you would be able to use AI with. It actually goes the opposite way. It almost is more important for the setup of the photographer and the lighting and everything at the very start to try and minimize what needs to be done. It's really in that with reflections and everything else, that's where the key area is. So it's the opposite of AI, I think, that area. Mm-hmm. But backing up Niels' point, it's taking the processes out that are not involved in the photography and the post, that you can take those away and allow the team to focus on the bits that do then make the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, considering or leveraging any new technology, it doesn't need to be a part of the creative process. It's all the supporting steps and labor that goes into it that is really we can leverage, especially the technology. SK, something that you said about when you guys were testing jewelry, and it sounds like it was a wild success. So I'm wondering if you are testing, like what are some of the strategies to testing to see if AI is even an option or not?
Say for example, Perry. So if we we were doing magic wand selection or general selection on Photoshop, compared to I'm talking about uh, 98 or 2000 something, somewhere between that period. Compare that to now, it is very refined. But go 2 or 3 versions before, there is no much differences at all. So even Photoshop is trying to do a lot of cloud AI computing, but if you make a selection, I cannot select a model very specifically. If a model is holding any object or any property, so the the complete algorithm goes nuts and it selects everywhere and it's not perfect. And we had to do, and on Niels' perspective, especially, we also handle some of the high-end clients for fashion dresses and all these things, and we made a very specific SOP not to use AI on those kind of images.
That's fair.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and what I could say on the AI e-commerce this thing. So we can we have trained AIs for selecting for image tagging for different objects that is being model is wearing. Say for example, specs or watches or belt and all these things. So, but it's up to 80 or 70%. So it can just tag it's a belt, but you have to. We have people tagging them to a particular brand or size and all these things. So manual intervention is mandatory for now.
Yeah. If my memory serves me right, Maria, you guys on Amazon are doing a lot of testing with AI right now, right?
Well, I don't know how to call it, if we can call AI. We are doing 3D scan. We are doing virtual try-on. I think that we are in the middle of so much technology. So scan in 3D and try and put it with your phone to see how is the shoes is. This is already we are doing every day. You can test with your iPhone, with your phone, and select. Um, what we can do with that, I think, is where AI can help us in the future. We are talking about jewelry. This is why I think it's difficult to shoot. It's difficult to in post production. We can take 3D from Blender. We can and just use AI for moving. Yeah, it's not for the studio anymore. It's outside for the studio. But I think it's there where AI can help us to have to have or create more image to our clients. Yes. So right now, to come back to your question, yes, we are working hard in virtual try-on.
When you mentioned, I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit from the AI because from the AI, like I just said, the Google. Right. So also then like shifting gears into 3D. I feel like now that's kind of become this like latest buzzword in a sense. But how are you guys approaching this concept of 3D, or what's your thought or your company's thoughts on utilizing it?
We used to have it, and it was great for designing. I believe, save sample cost, sending samples up and down, make designing faster, and simplify design processes. We also tried to use it for B2B sales, but it doesn't get as nice as pictures by far, at least not what we did. But the quality we were after was also primarily for design purposes. So then you see that you get something else than an architectural 3D render. basically. So it was certainly not ready for consumer-facing assets at all.
It's quite interesting because, as you know, Perrie, we were at a conference in New York a few weeks ago, or a convention, and there was a presentation there on 3D rendering, which was an excellent presentation. And the gent that presented showed some fantastic imagery that was created through 3D rendering. And then one of the clients, one of our major US clients, asked him, my COO has been telling us we should be looking at this and wants to know how much it costs because it could save us money. And his response was, if you have a budget of $200,000, we can look at a project for a few products. He said, but I can tell you now, it is nowhere near ready to replace product photography for the normal website, e-commerce site. And that was his view, that unless you start with a budget of 200,000 to start down the road of doing a few products and making something that's special and is almost an excitement piece, forget about it at this point in time.
Yeah, we don't all have that Adidas money.
Yeah, I believe that we can integrate virtual production in the background with the product in front.
Yeah,
I think that is something possible to do now, or maybe not so expensive. Maybe.
We also used 3D for our jewelry projects, few jewelry projects, and because one of the jewelry shot was completely, I don't know, something went wrong in the studio terribly. So all the diamonds were looking really dull, or it was damaged or something like that. And we had replaced everything with a 3D prop, and we rendered at the same angle, and we matched, and we delivered. And some of the jewelry we completely created from scratch from pencil sketch. And if you think about 3D into our production, so not in post-production, but in production I'm talking about. So there is a very big opportunity for the studios, where virtual studio is becoming a big part in the movie and other industries as well. And when I think about it, so Unreal Engine has created a beautiful landscape, means it has a extraordinary interface where you can create mountains or any type of outdoor. So you can fly back to Switzerland, to southern part of India, so within few seconds. So just imagine on the photo ops part, we'll be saving millions and millions of dollars on transit and travel and time and everything. So what we could do is, like, because now it is at the early stage, as you know, when a technology comes, so it's very costly to reach. But down to next 2-3 years, I think virtual production would be a greater thing, and 3D and AI included, because with generative AI, we can create a lot of objects in 3D as well. So we can create mountains, sunset, or any type of color, look and feel for the entire scenery. And we can make the model look very live. Because why virtual production is because since we talk about 3D, so virtual production is so intuitive, is you have very less work on the post-production side when you're shot in virtual production, because you don't have to remove any green mask on the reflective objects that a model is wearing. So nothing is green matte, nothing is blue matte, everything is like 8K monitor from the background. So it is going to be, and your camera depth, DOF, will be calculated through a AI algorithm, Edge AI system, and it will match the scenery with the model. And it is so real that sometimes, as I say, sometimes AI is just what is unreal is just blurring the line between reality and the unreal. thing. So I think 3D has a lot of scope in there instead of creating products and products, because fast fashion industry, we have to deliver at Movitech more than 5,000 images per day. And that cannot be done in 3D with the 3D modeling, and it cannot be done. And David has a very vast experience production studio, and he can shoot up to 2,000, 3,000 images as well in a day. But 3D cannot be done. Even for rendering, it takes hours together to render a perfect file.
Yeah, but what I wonder is, even if we would get so far that 3D or generative AI or any other technology that can generate assets for us from products that have not existed in real, whether it's going to be valuable for the customer or not. And this part of my opinion may only be work for fashion, because I feel that certain items, whether it's cars or bicycles or kitchen gear or whatever, is maybe easier on such things. But I think fashion is very hard on this, because ever since I've been photographing in fashion, I've always felt that we need to bridge the gap between being in a fitting room, trying a garment on in real life, being able to feel the fabric and the texture and everything and see it on yourself, that experience in store versus a very ugly picture online, which in worst case is, a black sweater is just a black hole. When I'm speaking about very poor photography, it's always been my goal to bridge that gap, basically, which is massive. And the way we do that is high-end photography, where we go very close on the picture and where we use light and other photography techniques to enable the uniqueness of the product, for example, texture or fit or the drape or whatsoever. And that lives by imperfections, I think. Even the most perfect garment is nice because there's a certain imperfection, or the fit is like this, or the texture is like this, or whatsoever. And remaking this when it hasn't existed, I haven't seen anything coming close, even if you got all the budget in the world, because you make it perfect and then you need to bring in these imperfections, etc. I really wonder whether, if we are capable of doing this at a decent scale, at a decent price level, is it then valuable for the customer? I can remember, and this is probably 10 years ago, that I was working at Suit Supply and that we wanted to start our Tmall store in China. And we were focused at really high-end still photography, mostly in the studio at the time. They were telling me, we're going to open a Tmall store, but we have a problem with the Chinese culture that they don't like high-end photographs. They want something to show that the product's actually real. So they were asking me multiple things, but one of the things was to take iPhone pictures of the product label in the inside pocket. Mm-hmm. And I told them, this is not what our photo studio is for. If you want iPhone pictures, you just do it yourself. You got an iPhone. So in hindsight, I kind of understand what those Chinese were after, because they wanted to see the imperfections of the product. They wanted to see the realness instead of a perfectly manicured picture, whether it's on model or still. They didn't want to see the perfect picture. They wanted to see how it really is. And even fashion photography and e-commerce, what we're doing today is still, we're pinning things, we're photoshopping things, we're making it nicer maybe even than it is on that model, but still there's a lot of realness in it. And that's what you need to be able to, to trust a picture or a website or a brand and buy a product, I feel. And it will be very difficult to get that feel back if you don't just shoot it from a person or from a product at least.
I got to say, Niels, I agree with you, because I do think when we look at, particularly from a point of view of e-commerce, one of the key measurements is the level of returns. Mm-hmm. And so the consumer that's ordering online a product needs to have a real perception of what that product that they're going to receive is going to be like, whether that's high-end or whether it's not a fashion product at all. But I want to know the color of the kettle or the saucepan that I'm going to receive. So I want it to be as accurate as possible. If there's perfections or imperfections in a product or a texture, I want to understand that, because when I'm ordering and it's delivered, if I'm disappointed, it's just going to be sent back. And I think it's important. However, where I agree with Maria and with SK is I think there is definitely a place for 3D rendering and everything for backgrounds that you might want to show the product against that you're photographing and getting that beautiful crisp photo or that wonderful close-up of the fabric or of the materials. But in terms of the product itself, I think except in specific categories and areas, I think we're still away from that.
Yes, I know that we are still away. I think that we need to work now to develop everything that we want to have in 3 and 5 years. And we need to high the level. We need to think in what we want. If you ask me, like a customer, I don't want the white background. I want to see, I want to scale, I want, And then what if in studio we only shoot or even scan a t-shirt in one size and EA help me to put that model or image that model in different size, in model with different skin tone. So I think right now we don't have the technology, but we can say what we want because AI can help us.
That sounds very interesting. I fully agree with you there, although we do have the practical or ethical problem currently there. How are these other models getting paid?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not a model, no? It's not a real model. It's a meta-human of Unreal. So it's so many things that we can use. It's so expensive. Different themes at the same moment. So I feel that we are in the important moment for this thing.
Certainly a lot of developments going on, but that specific girl, or boy, or whoever that's developed and being shown in your AI is based on actual persons or actual pictures. So there is a usage right somehow, which is one of the big topics in AI. Who does have the user rights? Is it the writers, or is it AI? Or is it Chat GPT? And the same will count for models. And model agencies are not easily going to let this go.
Yeah, I think everybody have to be adapted to this technology.
I see there's also an interesting point coming, Perrie, from somebody that's listening to this conversation you might find worth saying.
Thanks, David. I love a good segue. So we do have a question, but I want to stay on topic right now. And so from Ty, he wrote, this topic is spot on. As an in-house studio, we end up getting many requests to update SKUs with real images versus rendered images due to customers calling in, even though the renders look the same. And
what's interesting there is the customers can obviously tell the difference between what they perceive to be a rendered image and a real image, even though it looks very accurate. And I think we see that with a number of, there's a number of companies now like Looklut that are doing shooting on green screen and ghost mannequins. And it looks fantastic. It really does. But I also do hear people saying they can tell the difference between that and a real shot on a model. Whether that's the drape of the garment or whatever, but they can pick it out, the difference.
Yeah, there is like an element of the stoicness of the model too, because if you're dealing with a green screen mannequin, those hands can only go so many different ways, and then it becomes more of a distraction because you see the same stance the whole time versus looking at the garments too. So it definitely changes your perception of even the quality of that brand that you're looking to shop from.
Yeah.
Niels, were you going to say something?
Kind of the same as you, actually. No, diversity is a big problem there in poses and everything. So especially in e-commerce, where you see so many images next to each other, it's going to be even more obvious. If it would be one image, then you would probably see through this lack of diversity in posing or expressions or whatsoever. But on e-commerce, on a lister page, where you may see like 200 very similar pictures in a glance, you're immediately going to notice that it's all the same poses.
and I'm going to bring in something that Mark also just said. So Mark, you're joining the panel right now, talking about model fees. With companies like Flickstock and Looklit are covering the model usage and compensation. Maybe more companies need to adopt this ethical mentality. No, he doesn't work for either of those organizations. But that was a big thing about Looklit was I was actually a part of the team that brought Looklit into the U.S. back in 2015, and so the interesting part about Looklit is that you go and cast a model. You actually do a casting for Looklit because all you need is their face, and so being able to have a buyout like for image rights and things like that, you could do a global buyout for a year because that's really, you can't really have it longer than a year because then it just does become very repetitive. But it really was one of the first organizations that was just like buying the usage of someone's face, and then they would go in and do all different hair and makeup styles throughout for the rest of the season that you're going to be using that model. And I don't know if other organizations are really addressing that idea that there's, just because you have this technology or you have this use case, there's a lot of things in the background that also need to be compensated.
I think what's interesting here is, particularly if you look at fast fashion, there's quite a move towards using what I would call almost social media photography for a number of those brands, where it's wearers just wearing the product as they happen to be stood and everything else. And when you then come to the likes of Looklit, I think Niels' point is really important, which is the limited nature of the poses and everything you can do. And you're going almost from one extreme with the fast fashion to the other end. And that then means that those brands and retailers that are shooting on model, you can still get an individuality by a slight different pose, but still have the look that that brand or that retailer wants. Because if you're not, to me, today you may almost just shoot flat if you're going to do that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here and bring in this question from another anonymous. How do each of your studios record KPIs and or track productivity and ROI?
Yeah, first, this is relatively simple and straightforward. We've got our workflow system, which I mentioned, Creative Force. It captures all the data. And using this data, I can make any report I want. So I can report on KPIs that I feel are important. I can indeed track productivity. Return on investment is a more difficult thing because I would need to know more from e-commerce in this particular case. And we don't have that data connected. In that sense, our style guide, as we tend to call it, is more general and based on article group / gender level. So we don't judge ROI on a product level. We do on article group level though, but it's not very academic, to be honest.
Well, here we have our own system. We collect the data from our servidores, and then we have, well, you can see the data of the report in QuickSight or AWS or even Tableau, and in front of the target we already spot to have our productivity. It's more easy than you think.
Yeah. And from our perspective, we obviously at SpinMe have our own studio in the UK, as well as the workflow that we partner with global retailers and brands. But we partner with Tableau in this area, which is world-leading data collection and showcasing of the information. And so whatever information people want to drill down to, whether it's at individual product level, individual photographer level, whether it's by style, whether it's by date or whatever, it's all there in a live screen that you can see in real time at any time. So you don't even need to print reports. You can just see it there in real time and click to whatever level. So you can see which sample is stopped at what point and what the problem is causing it to be there. So I think all workflows today need to be able to offer that sort of information, because that enables people like Niels and Maria to manage their studios in real time. And the days of just printing a report off and seeing how it has worked is like looking at last year's accounts for me running a business. They want to know where the issues are now, so where to focus.
100%.
And we also have some, we have developed some internal tools to generate and see what's happening, progressing on a specific project, and we can also share that with our clients, and that's how we run our day-to-day production. So we can pinpoint on where we spend the most of time on, or which product or project or a specific person, so we can drill down to any level over there.
Yes, and I want to point that it's something that you can do like different size. You can just have a scan, even with the next, you match the hour that you're doing. If you are studying this photo studio is small, or even you can create a script, and every time that you create a sample, just activate something, and a report of hour and how many time you spend and when you shoot, all that. So it's different models to report.
To elaborate a little bit more, because David triggered me a little bit, our reporting is based on 3 pillars. The first one is no single product and no single stage should fall between 2 stools. So I have many different triggers to prevent that. That's one. The second one is showing what we need to do in the near future. So what's the first things that need to be shot, for example, or what do you need to order? And the third one is showing KPIs.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's been some advancement in technology with the tracking of data for KPIs? Like, is that, because I feel like that there's never really a conversation about the improvement of how we track data, or like real tangible uses of this tech. But do you guys see that there's advancements there?
Yes, there is advancements there, but I think what's important here is that, I come from a background where I don't think one solution fits all. I think it's understanding different businesses, different retailers, different brands, different industries, and it's how your solution can tailor, and those advancements can be used to suit the individual business need. I'll be quite open. I was on a call with a global retailer today where they're looking at how it could work within their environment, and it's all about flexibility within a system and within a process that suits their needs. And I think that's really, really important. So we can talk about advancement, and every solution is advancing, make no mistake. But it's got to bring the benefits that each individual business needs. It's not us trying to say to the business, what you're doing is wrong, you should work the way that we're telling you to work. And that, to me, is very important.
So being on the tech side, David, I guess, how is SpinMe, or how are you guys, approaching that?
The main thing is getting in and really understanding people's businesses, first and foremost, what their needs, what their challenges, what their KPIs of wanting to achieve are, what their goals are. A bit like Maria said, looking at where they want to be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, not just where they are today, and put a solution in for today. Because when you partner with somebody in this area, it's a long-term partnership. We pride ourselves, we've never lost an enterprise client in the history of the company, and that's because it's evolving. We use the word solution, I use the word solution, but there is not a solution, because whatever solution you put in place today, you will want more flexibility or more that you can do different things next year. You'll say, oh, I wish it did this, or I wish it did that. And so for us, certainly at enterprise level, that ability to set the solution to suit the needs and to reconfigure it, or even in certain cases do special development to work with other systems, is really, really important, because it's not our system, it's our partner's system. So when we partner with X retailer or Y brand or Z industry, it's actually their solution, and we're working with them to provide it for them.
It's their world, we're just living in it.
Yes, I think that's a great way of saying it.
SK, were you going to add something to that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with David, and we also work with a lot of companies for more than 10 years now. And we, if you look at the process, what we do is like now is completely different than what we did earlier. So we evolve from stage to stage. So the process that we followed 10 years ago is obsolete after 6 months. And then we have to adapt. So we have to follow up with that, and we have to change the process, and we have to bring in supportive systems that helps the process, and it goes on and on. It's nothing like we signed up for something and we have to linger to it till the end of days. So we are adaptive. We have to adapt. We have to scale up at immediate notice. So and that's the reason. That's the only thing we can measure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a workflow scalable, that you can decide in this moment of my business, I want only measure this and this, and then I can add or remove some, because maybe you don't need measure how much time you spend in prep, in receive, in repack. Maybe for the moment it's only photo, but then when the business grow up, you are interested in add all these functions. So depend of the workflow they're using, it's important to be scalable like a business.
I agree entirely, and that your point there, Maria, is absolutely spot on, because normally we find when we work with a client, they start measuring certain items, and as soon as they've got those positions in the workflow under control and working, they want to measure different items, and the fact that you can then configure it to measuring those, and then it's measure something else, and then they want to measure how effective and quick and responsive SK's business is, and is he keeping to the KPIs, and you're absolutely spot on. I agree entirely.
Which actually lends to a question that we just got. What steps do you take to streamline studio photography workflow from shooting to editing and final delivery, reducing bottlenecks and delay?
For Amazon, it's an internal program that is improving all the time, we hope, but it's internal. We develop.
Well, I think it would be the same for Niels and for us. It's using a professional workflow solution that's suited and adapted to your business needs, and actually measuring. Because if you don't measure something, the team don't think it's important. So you have to measure, and they have to know you're measuring, not as a stick, not to whip people, but the fact that you measure shows that it's important. If you don't measure it, it's not deemed important. So that workflow and the way you measure it and the way you record it and the way you discuss it is absolutely crucial.
I think 100%. But I also think you need to give them the tools. So that's, you need to enable them. That's one thing. And I think for a studio leader like myself, I think one of the big things is also, we are it's probably different in all your companies, but Scotch & Soda is a big company. We are trying to sell our products in any possible way, including e-commerce. We have, so it's a massive web with all different goals and things. And it's also my job to make sure that my photo studio is enabled through the company, within the company, that they receive their samples in a way that's in time, but also practical, etc. And that's that whole politic game behind it, basically. It is a massive thing, because people think that the photo studio is a box of 6, 4 walls, a floor and a ceiling, and that people are just in there taking pictures with iPhones and everything goes very easy, basically generative AI. But we all know that's not reality.
No.
So there's a lot of advocating going on, making people aware of what of what we need to be able to do our stuff, and KPIs help a lot there.
I'm just getting another message. I'm going to actually just read this because I think this is also a great point. Another one from Ty is that I think, as mentioned, finding a good solution for workflow measuring and data collection, and then basing an SOP on the process and priorities of the studio and asking the team where they have challenges and bottlenecks. And I think that's a huge part. It's also communicating with your team and understanding that sometimes team members provide solutions themselves. Absolutely. Is this idea that, we're constantly having to deal with leadership because obviously they hold the purse, but waiting for them to make the decision on AI or waiting for them to make the decision on technology or workflow improvements or whatever. But it really is the people who are living this day in, day out, who are actually creating this work that who are connected to this work as well, who have more input or insight into ways to improve that. And I don't know with organizations how much leadership is really talking to the actual teams within the photo studio about ways to leverage AI, to leverage 3D if we need to, or just to simplify the end-to-end workflow. Is that conversation happening?
I think that's a really interesting factor. And I probably talk to 15, 20 retailers a week. And one of the biggest challenges that the studio leadership team tend to have is for their C-level executives to really understand what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve, because they're normally in a box that's 6 by 10 or maybe 60 by 100 and don't see what's happening in the studio and don't understand the process and the challenges. So that's one thing. I think more and more the teams in the studio teams, the leadership of the studio, are looking at what is required, but they're not always knowing what is available or the best way to start. And the other challenge is the internal IT teams quite often feel that they can resolve these challenges and not understand the specifics of studio production. So from our perspective, I can only talk from a SpinMe perspective. For us, it's very important to talk to the leadership of those teams, to the individuals in those teams, to understand the processes, to understand the challenges, the things that will make a difference, as well as talking to the C-level, who obviously are going to be interested in ROI, who are going to be interested in investment and benefits and everything else. So it's a dual approach to talk to both sectors, but without understanding the studio production challenges, no business can put a proper ROI and benefits package to the C-level, because you're going to be showing to them how you're going to help the teams overcome the challenges. And I can give one example of a very high level global luxury fashion brand and retailer who we partner with. And when we won the contract with them, I was called to their specific country to speak to the main board. And the question I was asked was, how much are you going to reduce my costs in the studio by? And because my team had done the research, I could answer them and say, we are not going to reduce your costs by one jot. And their faces died. And they looked at me and they said, David, what do you mean? I said, because next year you will want to shoot 40% more products. You'll want 30% more images per product. And with your current solution, that's going to increase your costs by about 150%. With our solution, it might only increase by 70%. And I can tell you they signed on the dotted line a week later. But their first thought is putting workflow, putting AI in is going to cut our costs. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's going to improve your productivity. It may improve substantially your speed to market, which will improve your profitability. And for me, in most cases, it's saying how many days does it take you to get your product online? Because as we have done with several retailers, we can take it from 8 days or 10 days to 2 days. That's going to increase your profitability far more than the investment in a workflow solution.
Mm-hmm. So I really hate to do this, but as expected, the hour completely flew by, and we are now at time. Thank you so very much to all of you, SK, Niels, Maria, and David, for joining today to talk about the frontiers of Photostudio operations. I think it was a lot of insight, and it was nice to actually hear a little bit non-AI related content. I'm not like, just to put that out there too. There's a lot of other things that are going on in our studios. So thank you so much for sharing your insight and for being with us here today.
And thank you to everybody for listening.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Perrie.
Okay. And so let's get there. Just David hanging out. That's
Just
Okay, it is that time of day where we are wrapping up. Thank you so very much for attending the Photostudio Operations Forum of 2023. It's been an absolute pleasure to be your chair for today. In case you didn't get a chance to check out any of the other tracks or missed a speaker you wanted to see, session recordings from all of today's events will be accessible under the Agenda tab. It's also not too late to catch up with any of our sponsors in the Exhibitors tab in case you have any last minute burning questions that have come up. And then looking ahead. So today we are doing the forum. And looking ahead, we have the Studio Operations Conference happening in Los Angeles on November 17th. We definitely hope to see all 1,700 people there. It'd be great. I think that'd be awesome. But if you miss LA, no worries. We will also be having the in-person annual conferences of London in March and New York in May. If you have questions or if you want more information, check out Henry Stewart conferences, plural.com for more information. And as always, take advantage of those kind of early bird specials and launch offers. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to all of the attendees, our sponsors for such an incredible event. We definitely look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thank you.